Chapter 117 to 120. The Archmage took us right into his personal quarters, the room looking the same since I had been away. I had to keep reminding myself that for them it had only been a month, yet years have passed for me. "You're different," he commented, sorting some stuff around. I could only assume we arrived here while he was in the middle of something. "Very different." He turned around, staring at me while rubbing his beard. "It's my..." A book fell onto my head. Ow. I gently rubbed the spot I was just smacked on. "You didn't even hear what I was going to say." "I could take a guess," he said dryly, though a small smile quirked on his face. I let out a small chuckle, sharing his sentiment. "I had a productive time away, I'd say." He didn't elaborate, and I was curious what he was referring to here. This man was very perceptive and had a keen eye, though he was still hard to read at times. "Especially with you bringing another woman back when a Daedric Lord is waiting for you." My smile dropped. To be fair, Meridia suggested such a thing in the first place. Again, he just looked at me dryly again. "Well, I'm not the one you need to appease." He shook his head. "Wait, how did you know she was waiting for me and didn't just visit me while I was away?" "She came and visited a handful of times," the Archmage explained. "Near gave me a heart attack when she appeared in my school, merely sitting to the side and watching as a teacher of mine taught a class." "That is extremely cute," I muttered. "Not the word I would use to describe it." He snorted. "Though she did aid us when we were attacked." I paused, contemplating that. I was going to ask about the damage to the area. "Dragons," he said simply. My eyes widened at the implication. "How bad was it?" "A few Winterhold guards died and we lost an older member of the college who retired from active teaching duty, and many injuries everywhere, but most are recovered in full at this point," he said solemnly. "That is surprisingly less than I would have assumed." I didn't want to be cynical, but dragons were very dangerous creatures. I don't think the one I fought was indicative of their overall strength. "It's thanks to you, actually." He began to move things around the room again with a mental thought. "As soon as you left, I activated the wartime defenses. They were created for the purposes of withstanding long sieges and cataclysmic events." "They were able to withstand the attack of a dragon?" I was very curious now. I knew this place was well defended, but to actually hear it. "2 dragons," he corrected, much to my surprise. "They attacked in tandem. I was able to focus the offensive magics to down the dragon who thought to attack the town, but the second one then focused on the college." "And the second one was brought down as well?" "It was a hard-fought battle. Tolfdir was wounded heavily, but we were able to finally beat it in the end, but the college has yet to fully recover," he explained. "Admittedly, most of our effort was focused on keeping everyone safe, while the dragon could bombard the place from the safety of the sky." I winced as he mentioned Tolfdir. "This is probably my fault," I mumbled. "If I hadn't been so stupid last time, maybe they wouldn't have been here." "Wilhelm." He stopped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder. "I am aware of what transpired at Whiterun, and none of this is your fault," he said gently. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. At least the college made it through almost unscathed. Indeed. Damage can be repaired. I am infinitely grateful that the students were not harmed in any significant manner. "Any chance the dragon's body landed on Ancano?" The Archmage snorted. "I'm afraid that it was quite impossible for him to suffer any degree of injury with how far away he retreated in the conflict." I am disappointed, but otherwise not surprised. I frowned, before blinking in realization. "Wait, you said Meridia helped?" "Oh, yes." He nodded. "It was when we were attacked the second time." "Wait, what?" I will admit, the situation did not look favorable. Many of us were preparing to evacuate the students in full this time while his teacher would make a stand. To be honest, one of the dragons gave me a very dangerous feeling, much more than those previous ones. I couldn't help but sigh again, thinking how bad the situation was. "You guys couldn't leave, otherwise Winterhold would most likely be lost." The Archmage didn't speak, merely a nod in affirmation. This man would have fought all those dragons by himself if needed. "You're a good person, Savos," I replied, earning a small smile from him. "But how did Meridia come into play?" "She appeared at the top of the college, merely glaring at the imposing dragons, and they quickly scurried away." He let out an honest laugh. "I don't believe anyone else witnessed the scene. The things I'm going to do to that woman. I'll be sure to thank her properly later." I gave a cheeky smile. Yes, I'm sure. He deadpanned, but seemed genuinely cheerier than he was a moment ago. How's the situation everywhere else? He should be decently informed. Not too good, Wilhelm. Not too good. He sighed himself. Some places got hit hard by stray dragons, or some other nonsense with people taking advantage of the situation. Thankfully, nothing like Rift 10 has happened a second time yet. I clenched my fists. Maybe it was irrational, but I still felt like this was my fault in some way. What of the rum? I finally got up the confidence to ask. Once I heard him start speaking of dragons, I had a small pit in my stomach. He perked up slightly. I did as I said. I sent him many introductory materials for various branches of magic. To my surprise, he sent me a letter nearly a week after you left, giving his thanks and recommendations, because he had already become proficient with all those. The rum, really? I couldn't help but smile. Indeed, your friend appears to be quite the magical genius. Perhaps his nature as the Dragonborn is not the only facet coming into play here. He explained. But, otherwise, Whiterun has been hit hard, perhaps the worst since Rift 10. He looked at my expression and began to explain properly. They hadn't suffered quite as severely, the city is still standing tall, but they've been attacked at least half a dozen times now. Maybe that's to be expected since it's known throughout Skyrim that the Dragonborn lives there. That. I stopped for a moment, rubbing my chin. The dragons would no doubt find out about him, their pride wouldn't allow them to leave him alone. I couldn't claim to know their thoughts, but I don't think they would care about the city, only focusing on the rum for their own weird sense of honor and pride. It's exactly as you say. He responded. While there has been damage here and there, it's mainly been outside the walls. Farms burned, livestock killed and devoured, but otherwise the city is unmolested. They seemed content to call out the Dragonborn. And he's been okay? I wouldn't put it past them to enjoy the audience for their fight. If Draig was anything to go by, that would just make it more exciting. From what I've heard, he's been thriving. I hear he's slain 4 dragons since you've left. That's no small feat, I whispered, a small bit of pride swelling in my chest at the thought of my friend becoming so strong. I can't wait to go see him again. I beamed. That isn't all. The Archmage interrupted my thoughts. From what I understand, these dragons have been calling out some other of their kind, one who goes by the name of Draig Gotch. I slightly winced again. Yes. Damn it, Draig. Do they know about Draig? The Red Dragon Emperor is known everywhere. Does that mean it would be okay for me to come out? She sounded hesitant. Wilhelm? I was broken from my thoughts again, the Archmage looking at me strangely. Well, I guess it isn't much a secret then. I scratched my head. Was talking to said dragon, he was shouting happily in my ear. I sighed. Fascinating. His eyes twinkled in amusement again. A quick question, does Urag Groshub need an extra hand around the library? He paused, blinking at me in confusion. Well, he had asked for an assistant many years ago, but all those who we attempted to help him were eventually chased out. I hesitate to ask why. Draig, if you would. I spoke, holding me hand out, letting the gauntlet appear on my hand. The Archmage's eyes widened, a clear interest appeared on his face, but he didn't make any actions to inspect it. I touched the jewel on the back, taking out the lamp. Jinn. I said gently. My blue genie appeared in a wisp of smoke, floating behind me happily, the Archmage becoming more and more curious. Well, this is quite interesting. He gave Jinn an up and down glance, though it was more academic than any kind of lustful thoughts. She was wearing her dress as well. Maybe she knew my sentiments, that I didn't want anyone else to see what's mine. Hello, I am Savos Aran, the Archmage for the College of Winterhold. Just as always, Jinn happily reciprocated the greeting. I am Jinn, I am the spirit for the Relic of Knowledge. She gestured to the small lamp still in my hand. I assume you wish to install her as the assistant librarian? He chuckled. I gave a look at Jinn, she looked absolutely ecstatic at the idea. She would treat the place with as much respect as Urag would. A spirit housed in an artifact referred to the Relic of Knowledge. He rubbed his beard. I can make some guesses on what that entails. He seemed amused by the whole prospect. If I may ask, what are your capabilities? I have perfect recall of any information I learn. She stated, as if she were in an interview and providing her resume. I didn't interrupt, I wanted her to socialize more when she had the opportunity. And it would be lying if I said that seeing her happy like this didn't bring a warmness in my chest. I am also knowledgeable on magic, and quite proficient if I do say so myself. I blinked at that. It seemed obvious in hindsight, but the fact that she is capable of magic beyond her abilities tied to her uses had caught me off guard. Oh ho, yes, I think this may work out quite nicely. He turned back to me. You keep continuing to bring me so many interesting things, Wilhelm. I would be happy to accept her. Even if Urag didn't wish her assistance, she is more than welcomed in my college. Jin let out a squeal of delight, engulfing me in a hug, and I felt her lips make contact with my cheek. The Archmage just chuckled. Your other companions are quite interesting as well. I took Jin into my arms, happily having her nesting her head under my chin. Rin is my grandfather's student, she's here to broaden her horizons, so to speak. He wasn't something I had to hide much from, even if I didn't like to particularly reveal secrets if I didn't have to. Though, I trust him, revealing Jin spoke just of how much. She has some insecurities. I wanted to choose my words carefully without speaking ill of her or revealing her own secrets. So she may try and bite off more than she can chew. I will keep an eye on her, don't you worry. He nodded. And Miss Pendragon, her bodyguard? She's a knight, she's sworn her sword to Rin's service. While she is capable of magic, and probably extremely talented in that regard, she doesn't seem to possess any significant desire to learn the arts. A shame. He sighed. But, if someone doesn't want to learn, there's no point in forcing the issue. Also, I once again tried to choose my words carefully. Artoria is strong. I want to make it clear that her priorities are Rin's safety, but in the worst-case scenario, a dragon may not be an issue for her. The Archmage paused, giving me a contemplative look. Thank you for the information. I will not take advantage of her presence. He seemed to read between the lines there. If the college was in danger, she would probably take action even if she had to leave Rin's immediate presence. If in a situation the Archmage guaranteed Rin's safety, Artoria would probably be more than willing to lend a hand without coercion. It was me trusting him even more here. That piece of information would allow him to manipulate someone capable of killing dragons. Otherwise, I expect them to run into trouble, get into some sticky situations. Unless there is genuine danger to their lives, I hope you let them settle it themselves. The worry word in me couldn't help itself. Although, I hope certain political entities keep their distance. His expression turned just a tad darker. Don't worry, I've already turned away certain political entities from further encroaching on my school. And the ones currently present are on very thin ice. Interesting, the Thalmor tried to gain a bigger foothold here? And it looks like Ancano is very close to being kicked out. Good. Honestly, I feel like there's more I should ask, but... You have a very powerful lady to appease, and I'm sure you are worried about your dragonborn friend. He smiled mirthfully. Yeah. I just nodded, not hiding anything. Go, go. He playfully shooed my away. I will look after your companions and paramours. I guess he realized what relationship I also have with Jin. Well, not like I was ashamed. Take care of yourself. I gave Jin a kiss on the cheek. She was happily watching our exchange in my arms. Thank you. She said quietly, but I felt like she meant it more than just for this specific instance. I told you, didn't I? You're mine, I'll take care of you. For the first time, I placed my lips against hers, and she welcomed a deeper kiss. The Archmage cleared his throat, earning a slightly blush from both me and Jin. Forgot where I was for a moment there. Though he seemed more amused than anything. And the contrasting red on her blue cheeks just made her look even cuter. I gave her one last look, then nodded towards the Archmage. To his sheer surprise, I opened a portal right in front of him. His eyes widened at how easily I got around the impressive magical protections on his college. He didn't get upset, he didn't demand questions, no. Instead, he just started loudly laughing. I couldn't help but admire this man even more. With another thought, I walked through the portal. A familiar colorful sky greeted me as I looked up. The land masses that didn't make sense as they floated in several directions all around me. I didn't dwell on them for but a moment because my attention immediately turned to a woman sitting on a throne not far away. She raised her head as soon as I stepped through. Our eyes met and she stood up, stepping off her throne, taking slow steps down towards me. I took equal steps to meet her, no words were yet exchanged as she glided into my arms. Her head buried into the crook of my neck, my arms wrapped around her waist. "I'm back," I whispered. "Welcome back." The quiet words, barely reaching my ears. I don't know how long we stood there, time becoming insignificant in this brief moment. I just enjoyed the warmth of her touch, the feeling of her breath on my neck and the nice smell that filled my nose. "Did you miss me?" I couldn't help but lightly tease her. This goddess in my arms just invoked these feelings. "You were only gone a month," she grumbled. That wasn't a no. The muffled huff as she pushed herself into me a little bit harder was extremely cute. "Yes," she finally said. I couldn't help but squeeze her just a little bit tighter. "I missed you too," I whispered. It felt like an eternity before we finally separated. She was looking over me curiously. I don't know what she say, but she was clearly surprised by what she found. "I could not sense my sword after you left," she finally spoke. "I told you I would be disappearing for a bit and I would be safe. I did not think you could escape my gaze, just some bravado," I dismissed. She did not look all that happy, something borderline sadness in her eyes. I had thought the worst until it reappeared. That look she gave me, it made my heart hurt to know she thought something like that. I reached my hand up, cupping her cheek, my forehead pressed gently against hers. "I'm sorry." "Humph," she pouted ever so slightly. "Cute. You are ridiculous. And you are ridiculously cute." I chuckled, moving to meet her lips with mine. She accepted my advance, our lips meeting for a moment. To say that not once but twice to me. "You are brave," she snorted, pulling away, though the tiniest flush on her face. I reached out, taking her hands in mine. "Well, I'm nothing if not bold, otherwise, how would I have gotten such an amazing woman?" She dipped her head. "Do not speak of that nonsense. To trick me into such a thing. Embarrassed Meridia is something I need eternally in my life." "I tricked you, did I?" I lightly pulled on her, my hands moved to wrap around her waist, her body pressed up to mine. "Shall I rescind my boon then? Maybe I should ask for something else?" She made the cutest sound in response, seemingly distressed at the notion. "Don't tease me," she whispered, giving my hand a little pinch of annoyance. "I have already given my word." She looked up, meeting my eyes. "You are not allowed to make me a liar." "That's right, I believe you said you were my woman." I gave her a cheeky smile. "So I have." She turned away with another small huff. To admit it, I might not be able to stop myself from taking liberties. My hands moved down, grasping at her waist. I wasn't going to push her on anything, but I couldn't help but tease her. "Why, you have nothing but perversions on your mind." She didn't reject me though. How you managed to earn my affections I will never understand. "Perhaps a demonstration is in order?" She was about to speak, but I claimed her lips. It was deeper than our previous kiss, laden with affection and longing. Her surprise quickly turned into desire as she returned the passion, enough so that it matched my own. Our lips parted, she leaned back into my chest. "Say those words to me again." "Words? From earlier." "Ah." I rest my chin atop her head, wrapping her up tightly. "I'm back." I felt her hands grasp at my clothing. "Don't leave again. My sweet goddess." I couldn't help myself. "I won't leave again," I cooed. She made another small noise. "Good," her tone holding a hint of sadness. It wasn't the truth, and we both knew it. But if it made her feel even a little bit better, I would say it again. Regardless, as much as I wanted to stay like this, there was clearly some stuff that needed to be aired. I guess we should talk about the important bits now. There was clearly no small part of her that wanted questions answered. I could feel her shift under my grasp, and the way she looked up at me with clear longing. "You are hiding a great many secrets." "I am." I gave her a small smile, this conversation seemingly a repeat of last time. "Would you like to hear them?" "Yes." I chuckled, kissing her forehead. It's hard to pick a place to begin. I sighed, looking off into the colorful distance. I guess it started when I awakened memories from my past life. My legs gently kicked off the edge of a floating landmass, an empty void beneath my feet, yet I felt no fear in this place. A reassuring hand literally wrapped around my own, our fingers tightly linked together. Meridia was silent. I guess what I shared had shattered her worldview. Her, a being that witnessed and had a hand in the creation of this world. She who was basically born at the dawn of existence, had for the first time, been left utterly confused. It took some convincing. My swords were all stabbed into the ground around us where she inspected each and every one, the concepts of their existence, completely foreign to her. I have questions. I turned towards her, an unsure look on her face. I have no secrets in front of you, Meridia. I tried my best to give her a reassuring smile. This, Odin. Her tone was even, but as the words left her mouth, the realm shook. Where can I find him? Yeah, I had told her of my time in the land of shadows. I had told her everything, leaving nothing out. All the other girls in my life, and she listened intently, not interrupting me except for the occasional clarification until I finally ended up back here. No doubt, she was somewhat aware of the little bit of divinity she put inside of me, having been activated, so to speak. Perhaps she didn't have context of what happened until now, but the picture was probably apparent. He's already dead. I pull her hand up, giving it a kiss in an attempt to calm her. The area seemed to go back to some semblance of normal, Meridia clearly calming down slightly. Though, I thought you would be upset about other things. Her head snapped to me. Oh, and what should I have been upset about? Well, maybe the other women you have taken in? She looked at me. I felt a certain intensity in her gaze before pulling back. Do you wish to breed with them? I wanted to make a joke about the phrasing, but I decided against it in this circumstance. Maybe in the future. I said honestly. Humph. I think you would like them. She raised an eyebrow at me. You would have them meet with me? Do you not fear I would do something? Nope. I replied almost immediately. I trust you. She let out a snort, turning away, though her hand never left mine. I did say you could. She admitted. You were gone, far longer than you said you would be. She frowned. I said I would be back in a month. That implied you would only be back in a month's time. She sent a nasty glare my way. Tell me that you were not gone longer than that. I'm sorry. I gave her hand a little squeeze, not much else I could do in this situation. You shall make this up to me. She said sternly. Whatever you want. Humph. She huffed. You are never allowed to hide things from me again. I demand that you reveal anything of importance and share with me your thoughts, at every opportunity available. You are to come here and reveal your intentions. So my punishment is to come here and spend time with you? I raised an eyebrow. Cease your foolishness. That is far from what I have stated. She denied, quickly changing the subject. Speak to me of these other women. If they are going to be a presence in your life, they will be known to me. 2 of them are here, on Nirn right now. I stated, earning a flash of surprise from her. Are they in that college of yours? Yup. She held her free hand up, waving it gently in the air as the colors coalesced into a sort of screen that allowed viewing in the college. Didn't know you were a voyeur. As if I would use my power for something so. I just chuckled, pulling her in close for a kiss on the cheek. You can watch me anytime you want. That got another small flush out of her, one which she quickly squashed down. Here, is it one of these 2? I do not recognize them. The images flashed until Artoria and Rin appeared on the screen. The black-haired girl is Rin Tosaka, she's from the same country as me, but a different world line. I explained. She would understand my terminology at this point. She's what we call a magus back home. This magecraft you mentioned. She pursed her lips. While I did tell her everything, it would take a while to fully explain the details. I don't mind explaining it all, but I think we should focus on the bigger things first. I gently focused her back at the matter on hand. I agree. She said simply. What is her relationship with you? I guess I would consider her like a sister. She is my grandfather's student, whom he considers a granddaughter. Your grandfather, the term you used to describe the person you were in your past life. She reiterated. You know, it sounds really strange when said out loud. If you were anyone else, I would have assumed you were mocking me with your story. She deadpanned. I couldn't help but chuckle at her words. If you want, he would love if you called him grandfather as well. I gave her a wink. I am older than your planet of birth. Technically, Zelretch is infinitely old, I countered. That is nonsense, and you know it. Prove it. You. Hee hee. She just huffed again, unable to refute my words. So cute. Back on topic. I drew her attention again. That's Rin, if you see her, please take care of her. I will make sure nothing happens, she stated, almost flippantly, but from someone like her, something like her, that was worth a lot. I assume the blonde one is yours? Mine. That thought flashed inside my head before I pushed the possessive side of me back down. That's Artoria Pendragon, she's my girlfriend. Meridia stared at her intently, enough that I was surprised Artoria didn't perk up from the other side of the dimension. She is pretty. Meridia said simply. She is. I nodded. She is, the spirit. Meridia chose her words carefully. She's what is known as a heroic spirit. I wanted to clarify this right away. She is not undead in the way you would find offensive. Yes, I can tell she is a higher existence. Not a god. She paused. It is strange to consider other beings outside of what I know to be of such that can claim that title. If you want, I can take you away from here, to go see other worlds. I offered. She looked at me again. That. She looked deep in thought. I will think of this matter later. I wish to focus back on your other woman. What do you want to know? You said she is a knight? Yes, though I don't wish to speak much on her story, it's rather personal. Though being a knight is something she would never be ashamed of, so I felt fine divulging that little tidbit. I see. She seemed to accept those words. It just means you have to meet her and get to know her yourself. I beamed. It was odd, but I think that made Meridia feel nervous, and I couldn't help but marvel at the fact that this super powerful goddess was nervous at the thought of meeting Artoria. She swiped her hand moving to voyeurism. Where is the other woman? Check the library. No doubt that's where Jin would have gone. What is her description? She stopped almost immediately, seeing a blue-skinned woman appearing on the screen. I retract my words. I believe I have found her. Funnily enough, Jin on the other end stopped what she doing, turned to face us. Looking inquisitively at our direction, clearly knowing something was wrong. So, how hard are you making it to detect your little voyeurism? Don't call it that. She let out an indignant huff again. Your archmage should be able to notice my eyes if he were in the vicinity. That's probably why Jin knows. She's very adept at manipulating the world. Her ability to mess with the time axis was impressive. Jin. Meridia let the word roll off her tongue. She is a strange creature. Created by gods of another universe. And this is another woman you wish to bear your children? Well. Yes. The thought of Jin having a swollen belly did many things to my libido. She was mine. If I wanted her to have my children, would she protest? Though there was the issue of what she was, which didn't exactly lend itself to procreation. Admittedly, I would much prefer the woman next to me to have a big belly first. She's mine. I said simply, ignoring those thoughts about Jin. Meridia deserved my undivided attention right now. Meridia didn't comment further. Honestly, I think that statement was more conclusive to her than me saying Artoria was my girlfriend. I had to remember that Meridia wasn't human, she wasn't mortal in any sense of the word. Her view of existence was vastly different than mine. To say Jin was mine was probably a very simple thing in her eyes. I have more questions. Meridia stated. And I have answers. I gave her hand another squeeze. I have nowhere to be right now, except with you. A small smile grew on her face as she leaned her head on my shoulder. For her, I would have all the time in the world. And what is this land of shadows? Well, that was a difficult question to answer. To put it bluntly, it's a land of the dead. Where things refuse to truly die, all kinds of undead abominations wandering around, uncountable in numbers. I had been sitting here with Meridia for a while now. I hadn't even bothered to keep track of time as we merely talked. If she had a question, I answered it to the best of my ability, throwing in some light teasing and stealing a kiss every now and then. She didn't look too pleased with my explanation. Scat-hack stopped them from spilling out into the mortal world. She conquered the land by pure might, guarding the gates for millennia. Scat-hack. Meridia allowed the name to pass her lips. She spent her existence slaying undead? More or less. There was more to her story, but she did stop the undead from leaking outside for over 2,000 years. It wasn't just that though, she was very famous for having slain gods. Meridia raised an eyebrow at that. Slain gods? Yup. I excitedly explained. Gods, demons, dragon, monsters. If anything walked into her domain without her permission, it met the end of her spear. Her expression was hard to read, and I couldn't even begin to guess her current thoughts. And you trained under her? Oh yes. She was a very brutal teacher. I can imagine. Meridia said dryly. It sounds like she was quite powerful for a mortal. That was in fact high praise for Meridia. She only had the barest idea of what it meant to be a god from my home. But being a god slayer is impressive nonetheless, even if they were lacking compared to herself. What about you? What be you been up to when I was gone? I pretty much talked about my adventures until this point. I have been dealing with issues that come with my position. Meridia stated. I suppose I have ventured out every so often to keep watch over that dragonborn whom you call a friend. And that pitiful hovel you call a college. I heard you helped out when dragons attacked. I did nothing. She denied. I merely watched. Sure. Cease your foolishness. She huffed. She doesn't want to admit she helped them out. So cute. There's one way to quiet me. Have you not had enough? She looked at me with exasperation, but that faint pink still dusted her cheeks. Very quickly, she placed her lips on mine, then pulled away. She still had trouble initiating, though she didn't dislike our intimacy. Still, I couldn't help but tease her. Bribe accepted. You are ridiculous. She crossed her arms with another cute little huff. It was getting very hard to not push her down right here, right now. Even if she accepted that large step, I didn't want that to be our first time together. I was going to make sure it was romantic, and let her experience it properly for the first time. But I digress. It was hard to stop my thoughts from wandering when with her. What about the rum? Yes, your dragonborn friend. She pursed her lips. He has many eyes on him, I couldn't overtly reveal myself. But he has yet to contract with any other higher power. How's he been? Many of Akatosh's other children have been felled by his hand. That's good. The Archmage told me something similar. You worry for him? She asked. Of course, he is my first friend. I turned my gaze towards her. After my mom died, he was the first person I created a bond with, and you were the first person I developed feelings for. I see. She said quietly, an undiscernible expression on her face. I shall make sure no others interfere then. How much has she done already? I had a feeling she had been making moves, just so I wouldn't be upset that Thorum was harmed while I was away. The fact that she made an appearance at the college during the fight already said a lot. How'd you like to go meet Artoria? I finally stood up from my spot, brushing off my pants. Right at this moment? She seemed taken back. Why not? There is much to do, things I need to prepare. Are you nervous? I looked at her in surprise. She tensed up slightly. I am a goddess, I do not get nervous. I raised an eyebrow at the way she said that. It was amusing at what actually got a reaction out of her. I wrapped my arms around her from behind. Of course. I assured her. You are my amazing, beautiful, wonderful, powerful goddess. There is no need to state the obvious. She clearly preened under my praise, which was all the cuter. And Artoria will see everything that I do in you. I could find the humor in the fact that I was coaxing the most powerful member of my harem to meet the objectively weakest member, if we excluded Jin. But, when had Meridia ever had to deal with these kinds of feelings before? Nervousness? What did that taste like? Hell, something like love was probably foreign to her as well. The way she became so unsure of herself sometimes, yet, I knew for a fact she could easily wage war, fight and destroy her enemies. To engage in battle that could fracture the planet by accident. I wouldn't be surprised if many of the entities in this world shared similar thoughts, or rather the lack thereof. They were so divorced from mortals that even if they allowed themselves to indulge in the world, there was still a huge disconnect from what their true feelings. Well, thankfully Artoria shared a similar temperament when it comes to this kind of relationship. If it were Scathach, my poor Meridia would be eaten alive, perhaps in more ways than one. Hold hands? I offered, holding it out for her. Humph. She snorted, turning away. But her hand creeped over, sliding into mine. Ready? Let's get this over with. She put on a face of nonchalance, but I could see through it. Opening a new portal, she watched intently as we exited. I knew not how much she was brining with her, but I could more or less guess she knew the limits before something went wrong. We appeared on a slightly snowy path, the courtyard of the college. Almost immediately, the space near us ruptured and a figure walked out. Wilhelm, wonderful. The Archmage looked at me, then at Meridia. I confused you for someone else, excuse me. He abruptly turned around and teleported away. Well then. Well, Meridia was quick to forego that initial nervousness. She easily hid her emotions, something I attributed to her non-mortal nature. Her stride was confident, and her gaze alone scared away anything that may have wanted to approach. I had to resist the urge to get her to blush. She seemed to lead me more than I her as she lightly pulled me in certain directions. I was assuming she knew where Artoria was as she was navigating with extreme ease. I shouldn't have been surprised when we made it to the cafeteria. The scene with Artoria having her cheeks stuffed lit Den with surprise at our entrance. It was another memory I would cherish for the remainder of my existence. Rin also looked up, sitting right next to her with a stack of books nearby and one cracked open. Perhaps I was imagining it, but Meridia's grip on my hand just got the teeniest bit tighter. The awkward silence. Thankfully, there were no other people in this room. Yo. I finally decided to speak. Hey. Rin said without much thought. I was the one to lead Meridia towards the table, sitting opposite them too. Artoria and Meridia never stopped staring at one another. After a few more moments of silence, my cute knight spoke up. I'm Artoria Pendragon, it's a pleasure to meet you. While I had yet to introduce her to Meridia, I'm sure she could take a very close guess, with my hand holding hers and everything. Meridia. My cute goddess said plainly. It is a pleasure for me as well. Again, another awkward silence filled the table. Well, this is nice. I decided to fill it this time. A table filled with people I care about. I turned towards the black-haired magus. And Rin. Fuck you, Schweinorg. Her remark lacked any kind of scathing notions as I saw a small smile quirk on her face. Careful, you're going to make my girls jealous. I winked towards Meridia and Artoria, both of which shared a very similar expression. Artoria ducked her head, trying her best to even her expression. I admit, I have had thoughts on how this would go, but I find myself without the correct words. Meridia shifted her expression slightly, almost as if agreeing. I had just recently found out about Wilhelm's other paramours. I am too not sure how to handle this. Do you dislike my presence? Artoria asked. I had given him permission. Meridia pursed her lips. You are beyond adequate as far as my standards are concerned. Oh. Artoria quietly responded. I thank you for the compliment. There was another brief silence. Awkwardness filled the table again. Mayhaps we should have a conversation on how to proceed from here. I would like that very much. Meridia nodded. They both got up, moving towards the far corner, a silent agreement for them to gain some privacy. I didn't feel offended in the slightest. I knew there was some things they needed to speak between themselves. If I couldn't even have this small amount of trust in them, I had no business having a harem. Damn, I wanted to hear everything. Rin bit on a spin in her mouth, before stabbing it down into a bowl. I'm sure you can coax something out of Artoria later. I rolled my eyes. Besides, they need to sort some stuff out in private. Rin grunted in response. I could barely get anything out of her form the other night. She gave me a narrowed look. Makes me think something did happen. Nah, we literally just slept together. Clothes didn't even fully come off. I admitted. Though I did explore quite a bit of her body. Definitely not the last time I have that but in my hands. For a devil, you're really boring. Believe me, I had to thoroughly restrain myself. Have you seen that ass of hers? And those legs? Artoria hides them really well. I know. I keep telling her to show her legs off more, get something that makes her butt look good. Rin sighed. I couldn't help but picture the scene of Rin forcing her to try on different kinds of clothes. My thoughts only broken by them glancing back at me, Artoria saying something with a clear blush on her face and Meridia looking surprised. I shook my head with a small smile. So how've you been? Good. She said plainly. After you disappeared, me and Saber got settled. I've attended a couple classes and looked through the library. How long was I gone for? Little over a day. Oh, longer than I expected. I muttered. Any branch of magic here catch your interest? I thought their alchemy and enchanting looked interesting. You mean you thought you could make a lot of money off it? I grinned. She flushed slightly. It's a practical path to study. I'm just teasing you, I replied. It is a good thing to study. I barely touched them, admittedly. I wish I had spent a bit more in the past. But if you get good, then I can just come to you with any needs. Humph. She crossed her arms. You're not getting any discounts. Of course, I always pay for quality. I winked, much to her further embarrassment. She really wasn't used to praise. She was about to respond when suddenly our attention was pulled back to my two girls further away. A golden light filled the room, a familiar blade held in Artoria's hands. Wow, didn't think she would show that off so soon. I whistled. Excalibur was truly a beautiful weapon to behold. I never get tired of seeing it. Rin let herself slump down into her plan, arm propping her head up. What about you, Shorty? Who are you calling short? She snapped her head at me, glaring intently, before calming down. And what do you mean? Talking about relationships. I clarified. Got any boy you're interested in? Or girls, either is fine, and I'm sure Zelretch would love more grandchildren to dote on. I gave her another big grin. Anyone here get the courage to talk to you yet? Again, her cheeks flared red. It was a bit too easy to tease her sometimes. What's it to you? I have no ulterior motive. I'm just genuinely curious and wondering if you've found someone you're interested in. I don't have anyone. She grumbled, laying her head on the table. Don't get depressed, Skyrim's large, and even outside of here, there are an infinite amount of worlds out there. If you really want someone. You are a beautiful and intelligent young woman, I have no doubt you could find someone if you truly wanted to. The look she gave me was a mix of embarrassment and genuine thanks. She didn't voice it, but I think she wanted to hear those words. I just propped my head up, watching my two girls interact, for the first time, a feeling of contentment filling my heart. Generally, both fire and lightning like to run rampant. Because we're using magical energy to invoke the natural phenomena, the concepts are more interlinked into their creation than the true natural phenomena. How the elements are perceived is how they will act even in situations where factors may actually limit such things. Like it's extremely hard to ground a bolt of magical lightning, or another example, maybe the lack of oxygen in a room where you create a magical fire. The fire will still rage as long as its supply of magical energy hasn't dissipated, even if the scientific process would deny such a thing. That's also a reason why magical fires generally don't keep going even if there is a lot of foliage to burn. They run their course and then dissipate, unless of course someone made them keep going intentionally through other means. I get that. Rin nodded along. But why lightning over fire? Lightning seems more unwieldy? I don't know, fire just seems easier to use, I guess. There are pros and cons for every element. Elemental manipulation isn't exactly my forte, though I would say I'm fairly decent at the lightning element. It has the easiest direct use. I waved my hand, and a runic circle appeared. A thought and a bolt of lightning discharges. It's simple, easy, and straightforward. To use flames, it would need a continuous torrent to truly become a threatening spell. Fireballs were good and all, but they didn't have much stopping power compared to a bolt of lightning. On the flip side, fireballs were easier to invoke and actualize, not to mention the magical energy cost was much lower. That's why you use lightning over fire? Rin asked. More or less. I nodded. And I can't deny I simply have a liking for the lightning element that comes from a mere preference. Rin looked deep in thought. What about ice? Ice is definitely a close second on my list. While lacking the direct damage capabilities of lightning, it has astounding battlefield control applications. Why, I met a young man on Remnant who could produce water clones and used ice dust to an amusing effect. Do you think? Rin paused, looking at the two of my girls finally finish up and start walking back over. I have no idea what they spoke about, but I still couldn't help but smile as the thought of them getting along. Artoria sat down next to Rin and Meridia took a seat right next to me. Anything I should be worried about? I asked, a small smile plastered on my face. We merely discussed a few issues. Artoria replied. There is no need to dwell on it. Meridia added. Suspicious I was teasing. I'm not going to pry into something they clearly wish to keep secret. Meridia decided to ignore me. I do not believe we properly met. She turned to Rin. Rin gained a rather passive expression. I'm Rin Tosaka, I'm a student under Kishter Zelretch Schweinorg, this idiot's grandfather. She jabbed her thumb at me. Oi. I pursed my lips, turning toward Meridia. Defend your man, I poked her. What do you expect me to do when someone speaks the truth? Betrayed by my own woman. She rolled her eyes. I'm Meridia. She gave Rin a small acknowledgement. I am this idiot's woman, as he so aptly put it. She said rather drily. How did that happen? Rin asked. I ask myself that question every passing minute. My charming smile and winning personality. Meridia's lips curled up into a small smile. A few of the words in that sentence are correct. Maybe we need a second opinion? I turned towards Artoria. I was moved by your ability to receive a sufficient beating. Artoria replied, an amused smile on her face as well. Are there proclivities of yours I am unaware of, Wilhelm? Meridia eyed me. Oh, so that's how it's going to be? I moved my hand down and squeezed her thigh under the table. She stiffened, but otherwise didn't react. You just have to ask, and I'm sure you can be intimately familiar with them. Schweinorg, stop perving in public. Rin threw an apple at me. I dodged out of the way, only for it to be caught by a newcomer. I must agree with Miss Tosaka. I turned around to see the Archmage standing there. Actually, the only one who wasn't surprised was Meridia. Lady Meridia. The Archmage lightly bowed. I apologize for interrupting your personal time. Clearly, he was choosing his words carefully. Meridia didn't seem annoyed, that was good. Your presence is inconvenient, but not unacceptable. She merely replied, giving him permission to continue. He took the K. Wilhelm, I had received a message from some people I've been corresponding to in Whiterun. Apparently there had been another dragon sighting. They requested an additional relay of resources. I thought since your friend would be involved, perhaps you would like to deliver it? And I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact that I can get there much quicker than any other people you send. His lips curled up. Just a nice happenstance. Well, I did want to see the rum again. I admitted, casting a quick gaze around the table. We will be fine here, go see your friend. Artoria gave me a smile. You don't have to babysit us. Rin huffed. You're going to fight a dragon again. Meridia crossed her arms, giving me a glare. I promise it won't be like last time. She didn't seem to accept that answer, frowning deeper. If you go after those spawn of Akatosh, I will be keeping watch. Well, then I just have to give a good show. I turned back to the Archmage. What did you mean by supplies? Was kind of curious what they'd been up to. We've been working overtime to produce potions and other magical reagents to combat these dragon attacks. And we've had a solid supply of food to help out the area that have been hit hard on their farmlands. The Archmage explained. I could more or less read between the lines here. How thinly are you stretched? How many teachers and students have you seen running around? He raised an eyebrow. And now that he mentioned it, I didn't see any on the way inside. He didn't want for me to speak and continued. We keep a certain number of teachers here at all times unless something drastic occurs. This is a school after all, but we also must do our duty as residents of this fair land. An honorable position, Archmage. Artoria praised. Why, thank you, Miss Pendragon. He smiled gently. What about the students? I wasn't going to assume he was throwing them at the front lines. They make wonderful shields for dragon fire. Artoria almost choked on the food she had stuffed in her mouth when the attention was off her, and I couldn't help but let out a snort. I jest. The Archmage said with a small chuckle. We're making sure to keep our students away from battle as much as possible until they are competent enough and old enough to venture out on their own. Artoria gave him a little look, but he just laughed it off. We've been forced to raise our prices due to the dwindling supply of materials. The budding alchemists and enchanters here are making quite a bit of gold. While not all of them are learned in those particular schools, most of them are more than capable of gathering the materials out in the world while completing some jobs. How much are they making? Rin stood up, slamming her hands on the table. Rin, bring it down like 2 notches. I deadpanned. Not all of us has a literal mountain of gold, Schweinorg. She huffed. Well, I can't fault her logic. So, the kids are running around making tons of gold, which is actually helping everyone else to supply the needed materials and get potions and enchantments everywhere they need them. It was surprising how well it all worked out. The Archmage nodded. Huh. Alright, I'll head over there in a bit. I may as well. Just as Rin said, I don't need to babysit them. Wonderful. He waved her hand, setting down several crates, sacks, and all manner of containers on the ground near us. If you need anything from me, just call out. He gave one last nod to Meridia before disappearing. He is bearable, for a mortal. Meridia said idly. Am I bearable too? I shot her a smile. Humph. She crossed her arms. Perhaps if your hands didn't wander. She said evenly, even as I squeezed her thigh again. And with that, I'm out. Rin stood up. If you need me, you know how to get a hold of me, Schweinorg. She grabbed her books and sauntered off. Yeah. I ignored her indignation. She was looking for any reason to head out now that she smelled gold. But maybe I was being a little bit rude with my affection. I'll keep it down a bit when she's around. I don't want to rub it in her face. Take care of her, Artoria. Of course. Artoria puffed up her chest. It is my duty. I guess I'll be off. I gave both of them a look. So, dare I ask who I kiss first without making it awkward? We decided that Meridia will be your first. Artoria blushed, looking away. In situations like these. She added on quietly. I guess they just wanted to not step on each other's toes with the little things. You're my first, huh? I looked at my goddess. She wasn't as red as Artoria was, but that faint dusting of her cheeks was hard to miss. I leaned in, giving her a kiss. She put some affection into it, but I don't think she was used to other people watching. I think she was slightly embarrassed by this whole thing. Frankly, she was less talkative than I assumed she would be. Artoria? I asked, walking around the corner. She held out her arms, apparently more welcoming and not as shy to the company as Meridia was. I welcomed her unique flavor all the same. I shall make sure our man does not get in over his head. Meridia glanced towards Artoria as we finally separated. Artoria gave a bright smile, a quick nod of thanks as she ran off towards Rin. There was Defentiel, some hidden words traded between them with the gesture. I really wanted to know what they talked about, but I would refrain from imposing. What do you think? I asked her now that we were alone. Artoria is acceptable. She said bluntly, but from her, that was high praise. Slightly, her expression shifted to something softer. She was not deterred by my existence. She was respectful for the sake of being respectful, regardless of my status. It was refreshing to chat with another person who did not put on airs around me, who I did not have to keep up my guard around. I'm glad you two get along. My arms found themselves wrapped around her in a very familiar way at this point. Enough of your nonsense. She huffed. Go deal with your business and cease your molestation of me. So cute. I chuckled, walking over and sweeping up the supplies and putting them all in my ring. I would want her to meet Jin soon as well, but we weren't really in a relationship the same way, so that probably took less priority in Meridia's eyes. Besides, Jin was probably having the time of her life in the library right now. I pulled out Mirage, the familiar glowing energy wrapped around my blade. Ready to go? Meridia gave me a curt nod. I'm already watching your friend, he has engaged a duo of dragons. Sometimes I forgot how powerful she was, or more so exactly what she was. This her right here, right now, wasn't the only sense of self she was projecting. Honestly, I didn't really care. Call me selfish, but as long as she was mine, that was fine with me. What she was weighed very little on the scale of importance. She cared for me, I cared for her, that's all that truly mattered. I raised an eyebrow. Oh? Is he doing okay? He is holding his own and does not appear to be struggling in any meaningful way. If I had to make a judgment, these two spawn of Akatosh do not seem particularly strong for their race. Are you giving me your blessing to go fight? I asked. You will do so regardless, I may as well inform you of your opponents. She scoffed, but her look betrayed her tone. She was worried about me. Hey. I moved closer, hand rubbing her cheek. I'm not so arrogant to think I can take on the world, but I can handle this. It is not the dragons that I am only worried about. She whispered. I'm confident in running away, if that makes you feel better. Slightly. She muttered, dipping her head, allowing herself to be wrapped by me again. With one last kiss on her forehead, I stepped back. My sword flashed out, creating a portal over towards Whiterun. Getting a glimpse of where I wanted to go, I redirected it a tad closer to my friend. With another look, I nodded at her and walked through. I walked out of my portal, the immediate battle scene greeting my eyes. Well, this doesn't look too fair. How about we even the odds, the rum? Will. Thorum, my friend who I hadn't seen in what felt like forever, turned towards me. The battle seemed to pause at my sudden arrival. The two dragons looked at me strangely. One of them was flapping its wings a bit in the air, the another on the ground, having traded a few blows with Thorum. They looked slightly different from one another. The one in the sky having a slight red sheen to it, wings a little bulkier, whereas the one on the ground had an earthlier color, spikes protruding from its body in more places. I think the only thing stopping Thorum from running over and hugging me was his battle sense. He had definitely gone through some changes. His mere presences screamed more. At this point I was rather adept at feeling draconic power, and he was certainly shining bright. Abomination! The dragon on the ground roared. Usurper! The one in the sky followed. Those aren't my titles. Drake grumbled, though I just ignored him for now. Well, they don't seem to like me. I chuckled, taking a few steps towards Thorum since they seemed to want to watch me for the moment. It's been a while, Thorum. Aye, my friend. You've come at the best time. I believe I have a promise to make true on. Thorum laughed heartily, a bold confidence to him that he certainly was lacking in before. I don't think I can actually eat dragon souls. I pointed out. Have you tried? Admittedly, I have not. Do mages not like to experiment? Fuck it, let's see what happens then. I couldn't argue against this logic. Aye, that's the spirit. He laughed again. But, I don't suppose you have an extra weapon on you. He held up a sword that was missing about a foot of blade on it, cracks running down the remainder. I do have many weapons on me, but a thought crossed my mind. I took a look at the dragons who still continued to watch me and Thorum intently, like they were waiting for some big secret to be revealed. Were they waiting for Drake to make an appearance? Doesn't matter. Try this. I took out Graham and tossed it over to him. He tensed up as the blade was produced, even the dragons looked shocked from out of the corner of my eye. This? He gripped the blade tight, its baleful red aura flared up, practically surrounding Thorum like it wanted to devour him. I knew it couldn't truly harm him on its own, but I had a theory about it. The red aura raged widely, until it finally started to settle down into something resembling compliance. A dragon whose existence means to kill and devour other dragons. I muttered. Of course that sword would find you an acceptable wielder and overlook your dragon nature. Will. He looked towards me. What's going on? Thorum, meet Graham, the dragon-slaying sword. It detests anything draconic in nature and has special properties that allows it to harm dragons more readily than a normal weapon. This is not a Daedric artifact, is it? Nope, purely created by mortal hands. Kinda, sorta, depending on the myths. And it's all yours. It doesn't like me anyways, due to Drake in my soul, but lacking the munching dragon's portion that Thorum had. Thank you, Will. He gave his big signature goofy smile. How about you thank me by taking one of their heads? I stood by him, Mirage in my hand. Only one? I hefted his new blade with a surprising ease, giving it a few swings. Well, I want one as well. I smirked. That seems fair. He brought Graham up, resting on his shoulder. Well, by the roar of the dragons who apparently grew tired of our little chat, they too were ready to dance. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/Kayashin. I tend to polls that decide important plot stuff in my P at Trian. Many thanks to my awesome patrons. Ben Phillips, Yami Tancho, Kenny Nielsen, Harold Martinsons. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. I'll be here until next time.